Hey friends, welcome back to another episode of Unlearn with Bianca. If you're tuning in for the first time, then welcome. On this podcast, we explore everything around self-healing, health, personal growth, the mind-body connection, relationships, and more. Hey guys, welcome back. Today I'm speaking to the beautiful Sophia Harris. Welcome, Sophia.
Hello, so nice to be here.
Sophia is a certified trauma-informed breathwork facilitator, master Neuro-Linguistic programming practitioner, NLP practitioner, for you guys that know about that, a timeline therapy coach, a spinal attunement practitioner, an energy healer, a channeler, and an intuitive. That's a lot of things.
Yeah, I was like, what else can I add to that?
So let's get into it. This is not so much prepared episode, this one, because I really just want to chat about Sophia's journey and, having witnessed your growth in the last year, Sophia, it's been exponential. I think everybody that follows you can see that from afar and can feel that. So I'm just really curious to understand more about how you've done that and what you've learned along the way. So if you just want to start by telling us a little bit about yourself and what has brought you to this present point in time.
Yeah, cool. Well, I am, to start off, who I am now, as I am a mother of two beautiful boys, and that is where my healing journey, that's where my deep healing journey started. I have spent a lifetime of self-hate, self-destruction, low self-worth, really relying on external validation to feel my worth, and looking outside of myself to feel like I belong. And yeah, that's kind of, I went on like a self-healing journey, or what I thought, but I would always look for the quick fixes or the short little courses or the books or the one practitioner that can give me one life-changing experience I could find myself. And it never happened. And I traveled overseas for a year in hope that I would find myself. And any big, like when it first happened, when I left Christchurch, I was in a really good job and I got sat down by my executive manager and she was like, we're going to give you a pay rise. We're going to give you a promotion. I can tell that you're not fully in it. Can you go on holiday, go get your traveling out of the way, and I want you to come back and you're about to like level, she didn't say the words level up, so it's the words I use now, but I was about to level up. I was about to commit truly to this next level of self. And I think that's actually where it all comes down to, is I could feel growth, I could feel change, and that felt really effing scary. And so I tapped out. I went overseas for quote unquote 3 months and I never came back.
Really? Whereabouts did you go to?
All over the show, all around Europe, Middle East, so many places. I saw a lot. And again, I was still like, I spent the whole time searching for myself and never actually found myself. And I still gave away my power. And and then I settled down in Australia. Well, no, I did not settle down. I went to Australia and the same sort of thing. Like I got this really good job. I started leveling up very fast and received quite a lot of negative feedback from the women in that place, because they were like, who's this new girl that's all of a sudden taken on these big projects? And the same sort of thing. I started leveling up and then I self-sabotaged and then I tapped out and left, and they didn't want me to leave, so they contracted me out, and I just kind of took on littler projects and lived in Bali for a little bit. And I think that's the moral of the story, is I was actually really scared of change. And I see this in clients all the time, and I see this in people all the time. And that is where my healing journey really took me to where I am now, really coming back into self-love and healing, helping people come into that, is actually navigating the scary, uncomfortable change. And so when I became a mum, I hit postpartum depression for the first time after my firstborn son, and seeked help, but it was like a 6-week course and it was the starting point, and I'll never regret it. It changed me a lot. It helped me see a different perspective on things, but I still lived. There's this thing in the NLP world, and I don't know if you've heard of that, like cause and effect. I did not take responsibility for my life. I was still giving my power away to this woman to be like, heal me, fix me. These are my problems. Like, you gave me these promises that you would do this at the 6 months, and I don't feel it. And blamed it on her. And then I had my second born son, and then again hit rock bottom, postpartum depression, worse than the first time. And that was really when I was like, right, I need deep healing. And so I went on the breathwork journey, went on the NLP journey again. I know that helped shift things last time. And so I did both, and then realized that I had done the top-down approach, but I still wasn't healing it from the body. I was still had these open loops from my inner child, from my lifetime, from my trauma and emotions. I was emotional. So I was like, yeah, I can handle my emotions, because I was cry all the time. But I actually still held a lot of like shame and guilt on my emotions. I still felt bad for crying. And I wasn't feeling and expressing my emotions from a place of love and compassion and nurturing myself. So that was the start. And then I would say over the last 18 months, I've really gone deep into taking responsibility for my life. I've gone into my shadows. I've gone into my projections. I've really changed and worked on my internal reality to then start reflecting my external reality, and really, because that's where it all comes down to, is our external reality reflects how we feel within ourselves. And I know we can be told that, but it's not. And especially if you're living effect, which many of us do, we're addicted to suffering, we're addicted to our stories, we're addicted to our pain. So it's really hard to see it from that lens of, oh, I am actually creating this. Oh, I'm addicted to that. Oh, this is where I'm being held back. And then taking responsibility for your own life and being like, okay, how is this me? How is this me? How am I creating this? How am I projecting this? How is this person mirroring back to me what's unhealed within myself? And with that, then going into the uncomfortable phases, as I described before, of change, of up-leveling, of growth, of expansion, and not tapping out, because through that portal of uncomfortableness, on the other side of that is growth and change. You have to go through what I like to call a wormhole, and it's kind of like, you'll imagine this like small thin bit that then gets to the other side. So the small thin bit's like a shedding of our old self. So it's like really effing uncomfortable. And now I take people through that journey and support them through that journey, because that's where everyone taps out. That's where most people tap out, and they go back to their old stories, back to the old pain, back to the parts of us that protect us and hold us and keep us safe, quote unquote. And so working with them rather than rejecting, avoiding, numbing, pushing back down, or tapping back out and then not growing at all. We just stay in our own suffering. So once I really started navigating that, but I can tell you that has not been easy. And I know I'm really big on sharing that on social media. I love vulnerability. I love showing people the journey, not just like, this is where I am now, I'm so happy and great. Like, it's been effing hard. Like, those wormholes are like, oh my goodness, so effing uncomfortable.
I do. I mean, look, different wormholes, of course. The business side of things I get. And constant transformations. As you're seeing this, well, you've experienced this yourself multiple times, and you're seeing it in clients. Do you see those typical patterns come through? Like, obviously, it's the stories, it's the wanting to go back to old ways, old habits. How do you guide people through this, showing them that if you hold on, if you keep stepping into the unknown, that there's safety on the other side, there's expansion? How do you work with that?
Yeah, there's a few things. Firstly, it's always feeling. Yeah, that's what I'm real big on, is like actually feeling the effing uncomfortableness. Like, you cannot get through the other side without feeling what actually wants to be felt. So what we do is we like tap into the inner child. We tap into the parts of us that are protecting us and keeping us safe. Though, like, there's many. So it's always held within the body. So I like to guide people into, if they're feeling that uncomfortableness, and usually it's uncomfortableness or the limiting beliefs that come up, or it can be just feeling really down and flat and really emotional. And so I always like to tune in with the body on like, okay, where is the tension, the tightness, the resistance, the sensations, and then from there I guide them inwards because there's many layers to it. And then kind of get right into the root cause of like, okay, what is actually playing out here? What stories are truly playing out here? Like, what are those fears? What are those doubts? What are those insecurities? What are those parts that are holding on? And then how can you create safety within that? So I've got for all my clients an online portal with lots of mini practices, breathworks, meditations, workbooks to help them navigate and move through this, and then also support. And then creating and installing and continuing, even though you're feeling the uncomfortableness, is the body needs to learn that it's safe, and the mind obviously needs to rewire to a new level of neuroplasticity and those new neural networks and neural pathways. So repetition, dedication, like continuing on, even though you feel like tapping out, because there's two things that are happening, right? It's a stretch. There's like the future you calling you of these new beliefs, these new perspectives, this new version of you, and they're calling you forward. And you're doing all this work by repetition, by creating and installing these new patterns, but then the old version of you is still pulling you back. So it's working with the future and working with the past, if that makes sense, in the mind and in the body. So feeling, but also reinstalling those new neural networks to continue moving forward and creating that sustainable change where we get addicted to a better life rather than
completely. And I think it's just reiterating that whole, we need like to take a top-down approach and a bottom-up approach, because the connection between the feelings and our body, the sensations, the mind, it's all one. Another thing I really liked what you said is around that parts, because parts work is something that I've learned and I've studied as well. And I think so often we have this mentality of we need to disown a part, or that's not a good part, we shouldn't feel that part, we need to keep that at bay, push it away. But what you're saying here is actually we need to be integrating and more practicing compassion and acceptance towards our parts.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that was the huge turning point in my journey, is because I always felt, like I didn't belong. I felt like I wasn't good enough, not worthy. And I was addicted to my own suffering. So many of us are, because they serve a need. So for me, I felt like I had to have something wrong with me in order to get attention, to get my needs met, of feeling like I was loved and cared for. And this was from childhood, of like when I was sick, I got more attention. I grew up in a busy household. And so those installed beliefs and patterns and subconscious programming was there. And it wasn't until I actually started bringing them in and been like, oh, hey, there's actually like an inner teenage version of me. There's an inner child, like many. When I say I mean like hundreds of times, layers. And then you peel back those layers, and then you usually get to like, had like the same event play out again and again and again. I always go back to the same event, and it's related to so many different beliefs and feelings and emotions. And that version of me quite often shows up in my business whenever I'm about to get an up level or something like that. So as soon as I actually started, instead of fixing, pushing away, or thinking there was something wrong with me, I actually started nurturing these parts of me and been like, hey, because they're always going to be there. We're not just going to feel worthy and good enough for the rest of our lives. Like every time you go through an up level or a change or an uncomfortable place, there's going to be those insecurities because you've never felt that version before. So instead of pushing, fixing, or getting rid of, you're like, hey, I see you, I love you, and I want you to be a part of this. I want you to come along for the ride, because they're just inner children. And I always relay this back to clients that have children. I'm like, if your child came to you and they felt not good enough, they felt really sad, they didn't feel worthy, would you tell them to go away? Would you say there's something wrong with you? Like we need help?
I say the same to clients, yeah.
Put them on your lap. Would you put them on your lap, love them, and be like, you are so enough. Like, you can do anything that you want to.
Especially more now, I think, because we live in this world where everything is so instant and we have this instantaneous expectation that things are going to happen, right? So when we come against this discomfort, for many of us, and I've definitely been there myself at times, there's that instinct to like, oh, it's not meant to be, it's not meant to work. And when we come against ourselves, we want to back down because it's like, well, if it's meant to happen, it would have happened by now. When really we're not practicing any compassion, any patience, we're not looking for the lessons, we're not looking for the repetitive patterns that are consistently coming up. It's just that instinct to go back to what was or our comfort zone.
Absolutely. And patience is key. Like, I've really seen a lot of my life playing out now. I called in and manifested a year ago, actually longer than April last year. And I thought at the time, I'm like, oh, it's happening soon. And then I kind of gave up. And I think that's where our manifestations come in, is when you surrender.
Totally.
And they're only happening now. It's taken me over a year, but I didn't control it or get frustrated of why is it not happening now. And I think that's where so many people, it's consumerism. Like, we are now conditioned to get the quick fixes. If we want something, you just go on your phone and click Uber and you've got your dinner in half an hour and you don't have to go and get it. Like, you want something, Amazon here the next day.
You said something around like wanting that quick fix. For me, it's that forcing energy, and when we're starting to manifest, it's actually about surrendering to the process, but getting in alignment with our path and our intuition and putting in the work. So I know you're an intuitive and you work a lot with energy. How do you explain alignment to people? Do you explain it by the nudges, the internal whispers? When people want something and they're trying to shift in a different direction, how do you explain that?
How I explain it is the map of consciousness, and you can Google this, and it's got all the different colors and of the chakras, but it also has the hertz at what they're at, the frequency. So quite often we're living at a lower frequency. We're holding on to shame, guilt, anger, resentment. We're holding on to our past, and it's still held within our body. So that is the place that we are operating at a frequency. And everything is law of vibration. And if you're vibrating at a lower frequency, then that is ultimately what you're going to attract. And so how I explain it is like, by you healing and letting go of these emotions, you're moving up that. So there's a place that you get to courage, which is the courage is the wormhole when you're going through the uncomfortableness. And on the other side of that is acceptance, and then joy, and then all of these, and love's at 200, and that's kind of where we want to be at. This was actually looking at this map of consciousness was also a huge, I can never say that word, pivotal.
Yeah.
I was like, oh wow, because I'm a visual too, so that really helped me. So if anyone listening, like, I would really recommend going and looking at that and seeing, because so many of us try and manifest and call in our dream life, but we're still living at those lower frequencies, and then we're just attracting the same, and also being addicted to our suffering. Poor me, victim, because we're getting something from it. But also, if we're operating at that lower frequency, so many people try and manifest and try and bring the manifestation, say their version of them or their dream or goals or whatever they're desiring, down to them. But actually, we need to go up to it. So we are at the vibrational frequency, because it's all there. Like, everything you want is in the field. But you have to be at a vibrational frequency to be a vibrational match to then bring it to you. So that's my recommendation, is actually healing your past, healing those emotions, and starting to live and operate at a place of acceptance, of love, of forgiveness, because you're not doing it for them. I know some people can have some really effed up past, and I too myself have been through some really effed up situations and trauma. But when I started healing and just closing those stress cycles and those loops, and actually standing more in my power and my embodied self, my higher self, is actually coming from a place of like, okay, that happened. What are my learnings? How can I forgive and let go? And it's not for forgiving that person, but also to a degree because you're starting to understand perspectives and how everyone operates from their own subconscious programming and all those things. So you're like, oh, I can understand why they did that. So therefore I've got acceptance and I'm not forgiving them for them. I'm forgiving them for me. So I set myself free. And so I can start attracting and living the life that I want. And I tell you, it's effing worth it.
Completely, because forgiveness is for ourselves, right? Not about everyone else, it's for ourselves. So I want to speak on, because I so agree with you on this, that the repetitive themes that are showing up in our life, or, you know, we get frustrated because something's not happening, we're not moving in a direction, or the same type of toxic, quote unquote, person's coming into our life. And what you're saying, if I can hear it right, is that somewhere along the way, that is playing out because you're getting something from it. There is something that hasn't yet been addressed, that hasn't been healed, so you're going to continue to get that same play out in your life until we face
That's the same lesson. Absolutely, yeah.
So, I mean, I've had this time and time again. Obviously, we're coming against these our whole life. But what are some of the typical ones, typical patterns that you see coming up with your clients or that you've experienced yourself? The same situations or the same, it could be around money blocks, or is it people, the same types of people coming into your life?
I'll talk about money because I feel like I've been doing a lot with clients with that lately, is around like the way that they feel around money and their relationship with money and those unconscious patterns that they're not even aware of. They're like, and that always stem down to childhood experiences or childhood wounds. Like most of us have like a core wound that we've experienced that is like our core. We've got lots of wounds, but then there's like a core one. And at some point in a child, you've now started to see the lens from that world, including money. Money is just an external, tangible outcome of something, we can see.
Mm-hmm.
However, your relationship with money is your relationship with yourself and your wounds and your worthiness and deservingness to receive and hold and to be safe with. And also that unconscious, again, patterning of suffering. Like so many of us actually, because we're addicted to suffering, poor me, victim, we actually unconsciously stay in lack and being poor or being in scarcity or living week by week because we thrive from it. I'll give you a story about a client of mine. She told me that growing up, she was wealthy and she always felt like people wanted to be her friend because her parents were wealthy. And this was just, we were working through this with 1 week. And the following week, we had another session and she was like, she wanted to work on her money stuff. And she was like, actually, I'm in debt and I need to ask my husband to pay some of my debt. She's like, oh, it's not much, but like I just, it's not for like silly things and all the stuff. She's like, oh, I'm holding a bit of shame with it. So we've worked through that shame, the feeling of shame. And then what happened was she actually wanted to hold on to debt unconsciously because being rich scared her because she was still living in that inner child that thought that people only wanted to be her friend if she was rich. And then we were turned into inner child at that particular time on how she saw rich people. And they were like arrogant, show-offy, da-da-da-da. And she went on before tuning into that she, the weekend before, she was show-offy. She was like, I really didn't like this version of me. And so we worked with, okay, you don't like that part. We want to love all parts. But then what actually happened is we linked that back to show-offy meant rich, meant arrogant, meant that people don't actually want to be with you. And then also what that meant is she wasn't getting connection, which was her core need. So we have 6 core needs of the human psyche. So connection's her core need and she wasn't getting that. So unconsciously, she was creating this pattern where she's always been in debt because she wasn't getting her needs met of connection. She didn't want to be rich because it meant that she was show-offy, and she didn't like that part of her of being show-offy. And then she related it back to inner childhood wounds of nobody wants to be my friend. And she was just shocked. She was like, what? Like, I just had no idea. So she paid off the debt, and she felt really uncomfortable in it. And so I got her to close her eyes. And even though she's been rich her whole life, got her to close her eyes. And I was like, how do you feel about like having no debt? Like, what if money was just flowing in? You've got money flowing in and it's just there. You've got nothing to pay off. And she was like, that feels so uncomfortable. And so this is the thing, is our body doesn't feel safe. And so unconsciously, and I see this now all the time, and I just hear it, like I feel like I'm like I've just got like little beamers just listening to people's words and the unconscious stories of money. It's wild on how much unconsciously we create. And I don't say this with just money too, because obviously, as mentioned, it's the same with everything that we create in our lives, like diseases.
Yeah, it's a hard thing to hear because a lot of people aren't ready to hear this. So if you're finding it like an aha moment or confronting, it is like that. But we need to hear it like this sometimes.
They're our best teachers, honestly. If you're triggered by this, feel into it, 'cause that's where you're going to grow.
Speak on that too. I know I've like jumped from one thing to the next, but I'm just enjoying the way that this is flowing because as I've watched you, something, over the last year or so, what I really seen you do is step into your power. And to step into our power, we need to really own our voice and we need to own our truth, which also means that we may trigger people on the other side of that, and I think that's something that as a business owner or anyone just in this realm, you really should be doing if you are wanting to be successful, because you can't please everyone. How's that journey been for you? How's it been finding your voice and really owning your truth?
Oh my gosh, so hard. I'm not going to sit here and be like, oh, it was great. And I'm still on that journey. Like, every time I post something spiritual, I get unfollows every time. But now I'm like, cool, I'm filtering out. And I know the people that are meant to will come back when they're ready. And I know not everyone's ready for what you have to say. And that is okay. Yes. And I think that was the journey for me, is like, especially spending my whole life people pleasing and just wanting so desperately to be liked and giving my power away to be liked. When I was like this, there was this moment actually this year, the start of the year, I was like, what the F am I doing? I noticed the pattern playing out and I was like, no. And unless I put on strong boundaries, stepped into my power, and from there I was like, both, like, and it helped so much coming back to my truth, back to self-love, back to embodiment of my true self, and knowing that not everybody's going to like you, and you've got to be okay with that. If you like and love yourself, and that's literally where it all comes down to, because the ones that do love and like you, it feels even more like the connection is like so much like, deeper and nicer, and you know that you're here to make impact, and what you're saying people love because they're ready for that. And I think the biggest thing is like knowing that you're strong in your own worth and self-love, and then you don't care so much about what other people think anymore. You're like, well, they're either triggered by me, which is great. I'm glad. Like, I'm glad that when people get triggered now, I'm like, I'm sorry, but not sorry. Like, thank you for the triggers. And that's only because I feel comfortable and safe in my triggers.
Completely.
But,
yeah. And I've been on that journey too, and it's funny because when I'm personally learning from people, I love people triggering the shit out of me. I can take a hard word. I like that feedback. I am like that myself. Yet sometimes when I show up, I'm like, I'm just trying to get a point across, or make it make sense to people. Whereas it's like, if you can stand in your truth, as you just said, the people that resonate. It's a completely different energy.
Yeah. I'm like such a stand for just being so authentic. It's funny because my mum recently told me that I used to be like that as a child. Like, she used to get real frustrated with me because I would always come home crying from like playgroups or whenever we were at play groups or at a friend's house, I'd just like be so upset if someone lied. She was like, you've always been big on truth. And I'm like, I love that, because that's what I stand for now, is like, and I find it triggering when people don't speak their truth, and I can see it. I feel like I can really see when people are fake and inauthentic, and it triggers me. But I always look in those triggers, all right, where am I still wearing masks? And that there is where you truly get to learn and grow and step more into your power and your authentic truth.
Yeah, so I'm interested in, you said earlier this year that you were slipping with some boundaries. Typically, what things were you noticing? So the listeners can start to pick up, well, where might my boundaries be a little bit off, or I'm giving away my power in certain instances?
Yeah, for me, it felt like a need to, like I was like being overgiving of over nice, even though something felt off, like it didn't feel authentic. I knew that I wasn't being my true self. Like I was having to be someone, like I was like extra kind and extra loving, and I just didn't feel, I guess, my true self. And then I spoke my truth in terms of, like, in a really loving way. I shared vulnerably what was showing up for me, and it wasn't well received. And support is my number one value, and I wasn't supported. And I think this is actually speaking to values of, like, if you know what your values are, then you can start living by your boundaries and your truth, and start living by that, and practicing boundaries of, like, okay, are my values being disrespected or not valued? And am I living up to my values? So yeah, what happened at this time was, like, I noticed how needy I was getting, but it wasn't coming from me when I actually tuned into, because I noticed I was needing that extra validation. And I was like, okay, this doesn't feel right for me. I'm feeling insecure. I'm feeling like I need this person to like me, and for what purpose? And so I just started to notice some different patterns playing out, and I turned into my inner child, and it was actually coming from, it was a young adult version of when I was traveling overseas on my own. I got backstabbed by a woman. I was like into drinking and they weren't. And I saw a message that they were all organizing stuff without me. And from someone who, like, that's my core wound, is I don't belong and people don't like me. It really hurt me. But instead I just drank even more, and then gave myself away to men to feel validated. And I never actually dealt with it. I didn't realize how much it was affecting me. And so that's what came up. And it always amazes me when I turn into my body on what parts of me are showing up. So I sat with her, loved her, let her be heard, brought her back home. And then I really felt like, okay, well, this is not an authentic relationship when, like, the values are not being met. I feel like I'm giving my power away to feel like I want to be liked when I'm clearly not, and that is okay. So, like, putting in some boundaries and just not even giving my power away anymore, not like seeking validation, not wanting to be liked, not messaging that person, and being okay with that, and still loving this person from afar, like knowing that's got nothing to do with them or me. It's my own inner stuff playing out, and it was a beautiful mirror to see, and I'm so grateful for that experience, because it really showed me where I was still playing out those unconscious patterns. And I think this is where, if, like, women in business or men in business as well, is those unconscious patterns, like, play out in your business too. Like, I used to feel like I needed external validation on social media, likes, comments, to feel like, oh, okay, like, people listening, oh, what I'm saying is valuable, or like, oh, people will want to work with me. And that push, hustle energy, stepping in my power, knowing my worth, knowing my value, knowing I'm good enough, knowing I'm coming from a heart-loving, generous, kind space, to sitting back and just being magnetizing soul-aligned clients, to not have to push or force or control anymore. And it's been a huge change and shift in my business as well.
Magnetizing as women, we are.
Yeah.
I mean, we're all as humans, but I just think we've got a little bit more conditioning to work through of the way that how we can attract, rather than the do. And
Yes.
That's beautiful. No, I so appreciate you sharing on that, because I think boundaries is it's something I'm actually teaching on tomorrow in self-source, but it's something that a lot of us we've been repeating the same patterns for such a long time that sometimes there's these tiny energy leaks that we actually aren't even unaware of, that we don't even think about a boundary leak. So I always just like to get curious about where people notice it in their life.
Yeah, I think like just tuning in and like, are you feeling authentic in yourself? Does this feel, because I feel like we do feel when something's off, when something's not clicking or gelling or feels authentic or good.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's where I've always ignored that. I've noticed it, but I've always ignored it because I thought I needed to be liked by everyone, or I needed to like everyone.
So, for people that I guess are curious, and they may not have delved into personal development a whole lot, but they're just starting to sort of connect some dots, what would be a good starting point for them in terms of a practice or something that they can do? What's something implementable that they can do in their day, or something to consider?
Yeah, I would awaken daily. So OWAKEN daily. You can Google it, and I've got a 5-minute practice that is a life changer. And I always start people there that where they've just first started, because it makes such a huge difference to your day and your life. And actually, that's where I started. And the other thing is gratitude diary. Like, when you can live in gratitude, you can't be in negative or lack at the same time as gratitude. And looking for the gratitude and writing it down every day is a game changer to shifting your perspective on life and looking in a much more optimistic mindset rather than pessimistic. Like, it really is a shifter.
Yeah, completely, because it's really hard to draw anything into our life when we're not connecting to gratitude. And I found that even with me, like, if I don't put time aside to do that, and I get into just the busyness of life, nothing seems to flow. It's almost like I'm forced to go back into gratitude before anything starts to happen again. So,
And what you can do is just set a timer for like a minute and just have a gratitude rant. Like, I'm so grateful and thankful for the trees that are here. I'm so grateful and thankful for clean water. I'm so grateful and thankful for my hair. I'm so grateful and thankful for my arms so I can hold things. I'm so grateful and thankful for my legs so I can walk. I'm so grateful and thankful for my warm bed that I get to sleep in every single night. I'm so grateful and and when you, like, me just saying that now, I can feel that shift in my body, the energy starting to come up. It's like, you just do a gratitude rant. If you're feeling negative or you're in a rut, like, just place on some like empowering music and bang that out and notice your vibration shift. Like,
completely. And energy is, I mean, you work with energy a lot, but obviously it's what's the word I'm looking for? Like, you can feel it in others and it's transferable, right? So if you're going out into the world from that place, imagine the different types of interactions you're going to have. The openness of your body, the way that people come to you is going to be so different than if you're in a state of lack and a closed down body.
absolutely. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, cool. So awaken daily practice, gratitude practice. Awesome. And I'm just curious about like what the future holds for you, because you've gone through so many iterations in the last few years, and obviously your programs have sold out. You've had a lot of success and you're finding what's working for you. So where are you heading? What's getting you excited at the moment?
Well, I've just invested in a few different coaches. So one's like an energy, like spiritual development one. One is a speaking on stage one, which really got me out of my comfort zone on investing. Like, I actually cried. Like, I was like, this feels so stretchy and edgy, but I know that my soul's calling me to this. And then another one is a business coach to really step more into my power. And yeah, I'm really excited for all three of them. But in terms of where my business is heading, is I just want to impact and support as many women as I can. And I've actually had this soul download of wanting to speak at high schools, girl high schools, and speak to them about my journey of, like, bulimia, self-hate, low self-worth, suicidal, all of those things coming from self-hate and external validation. And I think now more than ever, we're at like just with social media and stuff, to be able to change one person's life by my voice, to have that ripple effect, is priceless. And yeah, So I've been really tuning into, and for anyone listening that's like on what's my purpose, what would you do for free? What would you do for free that your story can impact someone and help someone? And so that's where I've been like, and I've just had that, and I could see myself, and I'm like, I just like, my soul was just like, I can't wait. And like, that's yeah.
And is that because, I mean, when you said high schools, I connect to that age too. I'm like, oh man, it was really like same kind of issues, you know, same things I was moving through. Is that because you can see yourself at that age, and that would be really healing for you as well?
Yeah.
Circle.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I connect with my inner teenager a lot. Yeah. And I think that's where a lot of my stuff sort of, I really started giving my power away, because I think as teenagers we have no, you know, we feel lost and disconnected, and so yeah, just to be able to give those young teenagers a chance and tools and bring them their power back into themselves. Yeah,
so powerful. I think with next generation, I mean, you've got kids, so you might already see the changes, but I do feel like they're going to be educated at a completely different level than what we were, and a lot more awareness around certain things, which is so what we need in this era more than ever.
Yeah.
That's really cool. How exciting. I can't wait to, I just love following people whose trajectories are like, you know, skyrocketing. So as we sort of come to an end, do you have any parting words, any words of inspiration for the people listening? I don't often actually ask my guests this question, but I feel like I just want to ask you, because everything you've said today has really hit home, and yeah.
You hold the keys to the cage that you've put yourself in.
Love that.
I actually channeled that once.
That's a very cool message.
Yeah.
Cool. Simple.
You put yourself in the cage by your stories, locked yourself away, and you have the keys to unlock all of that and tap into your greatest potential.
I needed to hear that even today, so thank
you. I actually wrote down something else.
Oh, God.
That came through. I was like, cool, we'll roll with that.
Yeah. No, beautiful. Appreciate that. Awesome. It's been so nice to chat to you. So where can people find you, and what services have you got at the moment offering?
Yeah. So _liberated_woman_ on Instagram. And the services is one-on-one, 6-month containers, packages, and then the Liberated Woman online healing program, which is a group program for healing and coming back into self-love and everything we spoke about. And then the Liberated Leader, which is the business mastermind, where I take you from 5K months and above by literally stepping into your power and your authenticity, and the energetics around money and magnetism and all those beautiful things too.
Stunning. Amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you.